Good evening, everybody. Matt Derrick with Chiefs Digest here, and joining in on the live stream. Changed up the time a little bit. I'm still trying to figure out the best times to do these that kind of works for everybody. I did get a question from how about those Chiefs reminding me that he's doing his live stream right now too on Q&A. So maybe 8 o'clock isn't the best time because there's a lot of you that follow him out there. So I might need to do some counter scheduling and move from that. But definitely appreciate anybody who is able to join us tonight. And if you've got any questions, absolutely fire away. I will be glad to answer them. There's a few questions that we got in early, but also just want to address maybe a couple of things to watch for this week once the Chiefs do get back in tomorrow on Wednesday. Injuries will obviously be a big one, and Brian Cooks was the biggest one, I think, really coming out of the Sunday night game. And all indications are right now that it's really good news for Brian Cook. As nasty as that injury looked, and NBC didn't show us any replays of it, I went back, and I know there's some videos of there out there, but went back and looked at it, and yeah, it did look pretty scary. The way that he got bent back and had some his ankle got wrapped up underneath him. But as Andy Reid kind of explained a little bit to us on Monday, Brian had a previous injury with that ankle, and it sounds like that injury in the past and what was put in there, and I don't know if it was a plate or screws or what, but apparently because of that earlier injury, it helped out with him avoiding anything major on this one. So all indications are that, right now, that it looks like it's going to be weeks rather than the months that maybe we thought it could have been on Sunday night for Brian Cook. So let's see what happens. Looking over in the stream, and Jack Doreen, who is already a great supporter of Chiefs Digest, really appreciate you, Jack. It's gifted 5 ChiefsDigest.com memberships. That's amazing, Jack. Really, truly appreciate that. Take advantage of that. There's going to be some gifts out there. We'll have to figure out how to divvy up all that. So hopefully you're out there all claiming them. Truly appreciate you, Jack. You're a great supporter and really appreciate it. But with Brian, it really does. It looks like it is going to be a really good situation for him. We'll see when he's able to get back. Still think there's a chance that he does end up on injured reserve. And if that is the case, obviously that frees up a roster spot for Nick Bolton, whom I do believe will be coming back this week. That squeezes in with the other injury coming out of Sunday night with Drew Tranquill in the league's concussion protocol. It's very difficult, obviously, to make any predictions on when players are going to return from a concussion. And the Chiefs, obviously, a little bit of a situation where I don't think they need to rush him back. So even if he were ready to come back this week, they could absolutely afford to give Drew some time back. Nick coming back, Jack Cochran's gotten some experience. They're in decent shape at that position. Obviously, you'd like to be able to have as many bodies there as possible to back you up for Nick. But even then, you've got Darius Harris, who has some experience, and I would expect that he would still be active this week. The Chiefs do have some things to kind of figure out from that injury standpoint, and who's going to play special teams. So, there's some things for them to address. But it looks like a little bit better injury situation than certainly it did coming out of Sunday night, when it seemed like there was a lot of guys going down. Donovan Smith is probably going to be one that lingers a little bit. He's been dealing with the stingers that he's sustained the last couple of weeks, and he's also had another injury. His teammates have been really talking about just how much he's gutted through trying to play through that. And Patrick, alluded on Sunday night that maybe the coaches were just wanting to give him a little bit of rest because the injury was bothering him as much as he was trying to play through it. Wanya Morris came in and played decent. Hey, he's a rookie, so he's going to have some mistakes. I did not think, and talking to other people too, I don't think that sack was really as much on him as, Mahomes has to take a little bit of responsibility for it, because I think he drifted in the pocket a little bit. But Wanya looked, to me, pretty good. I think he was better in run blocking than pass protection, but it was a good overall night, for him coming in, cold and stepping into the lineup and doing a good job. So I think that was pretty impressive from Wanye. We'll see about the other situations and injuries. We didn't get a lot of updates on Monday, so Wednesday will really be the big injury update. We'll see if there's any surprises or anything to be concerned with. The one I will be watching, even though he finished the game, technically, I mean, yes, he didn't because he got disqualified, but Isaiah Pacheco, I would expect that he was going to be a lot more sore on Monday than he would after a typical game, not only from the workload that he got, but also from the way he got twisted up on that one play. Incredibly fortunate that he comes out of it without an injury, but I'll definitely be interested to see if he's on the injury report and the Chiefs give him any time off this week to deal with that. The Chiefs did make a roster move on Tuesday. We're dealing with the practice squad. They released Chase Cota from the practice squad, a wide receiver, and brought in Tyree Gillespie, who a lot of you may be familiar with from University of Missouri. Good player for the Tigers. He came in as a 4th-round pick in 2021. Decent size for a safety. Has some special teams experience. He hasn't been with the Chiefs before, but they are familiar with him. They scouted him coming out of Missouri. I believe he maybe even come over here for the local pro day. And the Chiefs were certainly at his pro day at Mizzou and have been in on him. So, yeah, it's a good situation, I think, for Tyree coming into, but the Chiefs need some depth with Brian Cook probably being out for a little while. Now, I think, Mike Edwards stepping into the lineup should be fine. Getting more work for Chamari Connor should absolutely be good for him as well. I think he's ready for it. The really only question to me about Connor is if the Chiefs want to use him a little bit more as a traditional safety, since this year they have used him so much as kind of a slot corner as a dime safety, more so than on the back end. But I think he can handle it, and they certainly have been pleased with the work that they've gotten out of him so far. So let's see what happens. Right now the Chiefs really only have 3 safeties on the active roster. So it's entirely possible that, Gillespie could be up for special teams alone. Brian Cook was a big-time special teams performer, and Chamari Connor was already playing special teams. Mike Edwards some. You'll need to take some of those snaps off, so there will be some adjustment. That's why I think that, obviously with Nick Bolton coming back, Darius Harris will probably still be back because you need to replace special team snaps. Drew Tranquill, would normally be on special teams with Nick coming back. So there will be some roster jiggling this week. I would expect there to be at least 1 or 2 practice squad elevations this weekend. Let's see. But yeah, with the Pacheco injury coming back, let's take a look at him and let's see where McKinnon is. That might be another position to watch heading into the weekend. Do have some questions coming in, so we'll just get straight into it. And Jack, truly appreciate you, Jack. Jack's one of our members over here, which reminds me that if you want to be a member of Chiefs Digest here on YouTube, you can do that. We've got some pretty affordable memberships, and I'm going to be trying to do a much better job of giving you guys some benefits that come along with that. Some special videos, some special premieres. I've got a Discord channel set up, so hopefully we'll have a lot more interactions going on here pretty soon. But Jack asking, do you think Richie gets more playing time? Richie James. This has been maybe one of the most perplexing situations on this roster for me all season. Because when the Chiefs signed Richie James, I mean, that was a sneaky good signing for me because he was so good with the Giants last year, especially in that situation that he was in with Daniel Jones. I mean, he made Daniel Jones look like a good, solid quarterback. There was a guy that they really counted on him. He had a ridiculous catch rate. I mean, and really getting a chance to step out from the role that he was in San Francisco. And honestly, even in training camp, I thought that, one of the reasons maybe he didn't get a lot of opportunities in San Francisco was that he was kind of Deebo Samuel light. I mean, he was breaking ankles all over the place to the point where I was like, how is this guy not going to get on the field? And I get the injury, but it seemed like even during the preseason and the first couple of weeks of the season, the Chiefs were giving opportunities to Justin Ross. They were going other directions there, and it really made a whole lot of sense to me because Rich James, to me, has looked solid. Obviously, now they trust him on special teams for the punt and kick returns, but I want to see more of him. I mean, I do. Now, do the Chiefs? That's the question. They still haven't gone that direction. They really haven't. And, Rashee Rice is going to get a good number of snaps. He's going to be playing a lot. I'm still think it's a question mark as far as how they handle the snap counts going forward for MVS and Skyy Moore. I mean, I think those are going to fluctuate a little bit. Justin Watson's probably going to have some consistent work about the same rate that you saw on Sunday night. Because he is their, complimentary receiver. He's the guy that they trust the most to run the right routes, to do a lot of the dirty work. I've been telling, this week, I've been saying, hey, consider him kind of like Albert Wilson. He's gonna get some chances every once in a while. He's gonna get his opportunities, but he's kind of out there, in Andy Reid's offense to help other guys get open and run routes and do things and be in the right places that frees up other players. So Watson's going to get his work. How do you squeeze Richie James in, especially when they've got Kadarius Tony's coming back now, and Tony played 12 snaps on Sunday night. I want to see more, Jack, but I'm not convinced that the Chiefs are in that position. So we will see. Flapjack City, the next one. Did Cook snap his ankle? All indications are, like I said at the top with the injury report, that there's nothing seriously wrong with Brian Cook. That there may be some strained ligaments, there's something of that nature, but it doesn't appear that the X-rays were negative. There's no break, nothing of that nature. Doesn't appear to be a dislocation, anything that's going to keep him out long term. It looked really ugly. We'll see how many details we get from Andy Reid on Wednesday, and we'll effort to always try and get you more information from the locker room too about Brian and how he's doing. But it looks like it's a much less serious injury than it could have been. So I think he's going to be in fine shape. Hey, how about I remember to put everybody up on the screen here when I answered the questions? I was kind of on a roll there. It was forgetting to do that. Bert, hello. Good to see you tonight. When the interception was thrown, play called and was run, can you confirm Mahomes changed play to pass? That is my understanding. It certainly had all of the elements of an RPO, a run pass option. And the indications I've gotten is that, yes, it was intended to be a run originally. And Mahomes, obviously in any RPO, he's got the ability to change it up. I mean, that's the very nature of an RPO, is the ability that it can be a run pass. You can lean one way. It can be built in to go one direction, but then you can change it to the other. Some RPOs are literally designed for the quarterback to read what the defensive end's doing, what the defensive lines are doing, what the linebackers are doing, and then make a decision about whether or not to pull the ball back. My understanding is that play was intended to be a run. Mahomes saw a coverage that he liked and signaled to Skyy to make the change, but they weren't on the same page about how to run that route. Now, will we get further details? I mean, no one with the Chiefs wants to play the blame game. So, I think Andy Reid's going to throw himself on the sword on this one to say, hey, look, he should have been able to put the guys in a better position. And certainly, I mean, Patrick may end up taking the blame for it. Skyy may take the blame. I don't know if we'll ever get the real story because, players and coaches don't like to throw each other under the bus, but there was clearly a miscommunication, and that can happen. Now, the Chiefs were just in a very unfortunate situation that Keyshawn Nixon read the sign, read the signal, knew what the Chiefs were doing. He'd seen it on tape that they'd done it before, and just ran a better route essentially to make the play. So, as confirmed as we can get that, yes, Mahomes did change the play from a run to a pass, but what exactly went wrong? I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get the real story on that one, but that is at least my understanding, is that yes, it was going to be a run that they changed out of, and did obviously not go the way that Mahomes wanted. Going next to Jacob, do you see Jones getting traded next year? If so, what's the compensation? I mean, from a business standpoint, and I think that's really all we can look at this point is the business aspect of it. Is that, yeah, he probably will. I think he will get traded. I think that's the most likely scenario. Is it the exclusive scenario? No. There are other options. I mean, obviously they can get a deal done with Chris. But to me, I mean, I don't see Chris's demands changing a lot. I don't see the Chiefs and what they're willing to pay changing a lot. And if that's the case, then yeah, a tag and trade seems to be the most likely scenario. Let's see what happens. I mean, this could be another interesting offseason. We'll see what develops out of it. Still a lot to go. I mean, a lot of things could change, and I hate to say anything is set in stone. But yeah, I mean, I think at this point that is the most likely scenario. I think it's just going to be too hard for the Chiefs to be able to keep everybody that they want. And as we've seen this year, there's some other fixes. There's some other things that they need to do on this team. And, and honestly, I mean, this team might look different had the Chiefs been able to get a deal with Chris Dunn during this past offseason. I mean, if they do that, maybe they're involved with a veteran wide receiver. That's still on their wish list. There are still things that they want to get done, and you got to address Chris first. And that will probably be the other part of it too, is that if I don't think the Chiefs can go through another offseason standoff. So if it's going to come down to, Chris holding out, anything of that nature, I think that makes it even more likely. But as far as what the compensation goes, I mean, you really just need one team to fall in love and thinking that this is the player that can put them over the top. What's the market rate? I mean, Chris has obviously wanted something close to what Aaron Donald had. And Aaron Donald is what, $33 million ballpark. Can Chris get there at his age? I think that's tough. Is the upper 20s, I think, a reasonable number for him? Maybe. Now, compensation back for what the Chiefs could get, that I think is going to be hard. I mean, be realistic on your expectations on this is what I would say, because remember, he's an older player. It's a different position than Tyreek Hill. So I don't think you're going to be able to get that. When I've talked to people about what maybe the Chiefs could expect back, probably a second starting at the high end, not necessarily a first. Chiefs could probably upgrade it to a first if they want to, send some picks back, but a second and a fifth, maybe a little bit more, but it's going to be tough when you're talking about a player who's now going to be into his 30s, that a team's going to have to pay a lot of money to. That makes it more difficult, even as good as Chris is. Now, I think a little bit it's going to determine how Chris finishes out the year. If he ends up with 12, 15 sacks, we'll probably have a different conversation, and there's going to be, higher in compensation, but a long time to go between now and then. And one thing I definitely say about not only Chris, but any of the potential free agents that the Chiefs have this year, enjoy them while they're here. They've got some good guys who are going to be free agents this offseason. They're going to have to make some tough decisions. Just enjoy the ride and don't stress out about it too much. There'll be time in March to deal with that. But in the meantime, just sit back and have fun and watch these guys play. Moving on to Bumpa BB. Some people suggest that the best way to solve the wide receiver room is to draft a round one receiver. My question is, how would that help when Andy hates playing rookies? That is a legitimate question. And I don't want to say that he hates rookies, because obviously right now you look at Richie Rice and he's doing great things. And I think there's one of my bold predictions for the second half of the season was that Richie Rice might just hit the 1,000-yard mark, because I think they're going to need him to, if they want to win the games that they want. If they want to make a deep run into the playoffs and they want to get the 1 seed, I mean, I think they need Richie Rice to be that kind of guy. What I say is that it's tough for a rookie to come in because there is so much to learn to this offense. You need to be a polished receiver coming in if you're going to play immediately for Andy Reid. Deshaun Jackson was a polished receiver. Jeremy Maclin was a polished receiver. Those were 800, 900-yard receivers as rookies. Rasheed Rice is going to be in that ballpark. He's got 591 yards now. He's got 5 more games. Plenty of room to get into that ballpark with Maclin and Jackson. And hey, if next year you were able to get another player with the comparable production of those three, of Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, and Rasheed Rice, that would be great to add to this offense. I think it's easier, obviously, for a young player to come into an Andy Reid offense if they're not being asked to be the guy. And that's what really impressed me about Rasheed Rice and why he's kind of exceeded my ceiling for Rasheed Rice for a good year is exactly where he is. I thought if he could put up, and I said this about Skyy Moore last year as his ceiling, you get to the 593 yards that Tyreek Hill put up as a rookie, that's the best you could hope for. Rashee Rice is going to blow that away. So now a player who's good enough to draft round one, even if it's late in the first round, could be 32, but a player of that caliber should absolutely be able to come in and kind of give you what Rashee Rice, that's a reasonable expectation. But you can't do it if it's a developmental player. You can't do it if it's somebody that needs some work. It needs to be somebody who right now shows that they can understand route combinations, that they can read defenses. I mean, if I'm the Chiefs and I'm talking to wide receivers, I want them to come in and get on the blackboard and illustrate some plays about what coverages they're seeing and how they're going to make adjustments and how they would react to that. That's what the Chiefs saw in Rashee Rice when they did the workouts with him, and they need to see that in the next guy that they draft too. So I don't, but hey, are you going to draft a guy that's going to come in for Andy Reid and be a 1,200-yard receiver? No, I think that's asking too much. But honestly, the Chiefs needed that. Even a 600, 700, 800-yard guy, they need that. And they need to develop that room with some young blood. So I wouldn't have any problem with them putting a first round pick into a receiver. I mean, you kind of get what you get sometimes. And yeah, Skyy has not developed the way that everybody expected at this point. Doesn't mean he's done. I mean, he's still got some time. But Rashee's case, I think, shows you that the right rookie coming in the right place, the right time for Andy Reid can work. Going on to our next question from Caesar Noel. Quinnen, I hope Noel or Noel. I apologize, but I hope one of those is right. There's not a third option that I've messed up, Caesar. I appreciate you, man. If the Chiefs manage to get Ertz, does employing the 13 personnel be more effective with Ertz taking the Jody Fortson role? I think it certainly would be a lot easier. And I'm surprised. I mean, because I was talking with Ryan Tracy over at Chris Clark from over at Locked On Chiefs earlier today about this. For as much as the Chiefs, focused on 12 and 13 personnel with multiple tight ends in training camp, we haven't seen it as much during the season. I mean, they've still deployed it, but it does make me think, have they been working on things? Were they working on things during the offseason that were more situated for what they were going to do when it got to playoff time? That there were some things that they built into the offense and installed back then that they were planning to come back to. And, it doesn't preclude, from using the tight ends that you currently have. I mean, I think even if they wanted to bring up Matt Bushman from the practice squad, I think he's prepared to contribute in some ways in multiple tight end sets. Ertz would be interesting, and the Chiefs are certainly interested in him. Let's see. It's I don't know if it's technically difficult. I think Zach would understand that anywhere he goes, he's going to be the number 2 guy. There's probably not a lot of offenses, especially since he's looking to go to a team that is a winner, that he understands that he's gonna have to be second fiddle to somebody. And so, but Kansas City's a good opportunity for him. And it's a new offense for him, so that would be difficult, but he is, I think, well equipped enough in the language of the West Coast offense that I think it would be okay for him to be able to come in. But yeah, I mean, 12 and 13 personnel with Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz, it would be pretty interesting to see. It would certainly, to me, make the Chiefs a lot stronger in short yardage and red zone situations, if he's able to come in and get up to speed as quickly as possible. Jackson, remember the clip of Jason Kelce screaming in the face of the Cowboys player? You ever feel like you're Jason and Andy as the Cowboys player and just screaming his face, stop going away from the run? There's probably a few guys that feel like that. And I'll tell you what, I mean, that's one of the things that, and I've been asked about, do the Chiefs miss Eric Bieniemy? And maybe they do. I mean, maybe they do, because Eric's was a different voice. I mean, don't get me wrong, this Chiefs coaching staff holds guys accountable. There's no doubt about that. I mean, there is a level of excellence that this coaching staff and this organization expects from people. But Eric Bieniemy had a different sound to it. I mean, you've all heard it. You've seen the videos and everything. And, you see he can get in people's faces and and hold them accountable in a different way. And maybe they do miss that, because I'm not certain that they have anybody else on that coaching staff that really handles players the way EB does. And obviously it doesn't work for everybody, but it works for some. And there's a lot of players who would follow EB to the end of the earth. So that's the one thing I do think they miss. But the biggest thing I think they miss with EB is exactly that. The guy who's going to be, arguing for the run game, who's going to be saying, hey, we need to put this play in, or this needs to be part of the package this week, or on the headset during a game, need to run the football. You know what? It needs to be done. I don't know if there's anybody that's doing that right now, because there's so many guys that are part of the game planning process that are all pass first guys. Just makes me wonder. I would love to see if, maybe we can get somebody to talk about it, and I can get somebody to talk to me about it and share their feelings. But I do. I mean, I think that's yeah. I think there's a lot of people who would probably love to be able to do that, stop going away from the run. Bump it back. I don't understand. Oh, that's on Cook's foot. It's truly amazing. And like I said, hopefully Wimby will get more of the story. But my understanding on the Brian Cook injury is that he had a previous injury that played a role in really helping him from this being more severe. And like I said, I don't know if it's something that was placed in there, hardware wise, that, reinforced that bone or something. But it really is. It's remarkable that he came out of that apparently fairly unscathed. Like I said, I think it looks like he's going to miss some time because there is some damage in there, but nothing severe. So cross your fingers and see what happens. Going to Matt. Good name, Matt. Does Pacheco get suspended for the first half of next game with his disqualification? Now, my understanding, and I'm trying to recall here, I don't believe that the NFL has any mechanism for that. I think that I believe the only NFL mechanism is suspending for an entire game. It's not like college where, you get disqualified and then you're out for the next game for half a game or something. NFL really doesn't do that. So teams could do that, but I don't think that the Chiefs will do that. He will get fined. There's absolutely no doubt, and it's going to be a hefty one, especially for a rookie. And if you've seen some of the fines that have been going out for unnecessary roughness, when you get to a disqualification penalty, a punch. Yeah, I mean, there's a baseline, and it's going to be on the higher end of it. So he's going to be out. He's going to get a letter in his locker on Friday that's going to be informing him that his paycheck is not as big as it would normally be. But I don't think there'll be a suspension coming out of it. Typically, with the NFL, you need repeated instances. This is a first-time offender for Pacheco. It's not like he's been punching guys or late hits or anything of that nature. So I can't imagine a suspension coming from the league, but he's definitely going to get fined, and that will probably be enough because, like I said, he's on a 7th round rookie contract. He doesn't make a whole lot of money as it is, and they're gonna dip into it this week and get some money out for him. So. Going back to Bump, what do you think about FAU? You think he will start getting more snaps, or is he in a redshirt year? I think it's a redshirt year, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I think that the Chiefs were high-end hopeful that he was a guy that, if needed late in the year into the playoffs, could give them some snaps. But I never got the expectation that there was a super high ceiling for FAU this year, that they expected Felix to come in and be a starter, anything like that. And certainly you look at the way this room was constructed. I mean, they knew they had George Karlaftis. They had Mike Dana coming back. They go out and sign Charles Omenihu. They knew what they had. So even when Felix got here, there was a role in the pecking order about where he would be. And then you add in, and I think this, once again, the part that really gets lost is the hand injury that kept him out of OTAs and the rookie minicamp and the mandatory minicamp. I mean, he essentially missed 16 practices. And then when he gets into training camp, he's playing catch up from the very beginning. I think he's handled everything really well. I mean, he was the proverbial, as they like to say, drinking from a fire hose during training camp, with everything that they were dumping on his plate. And yeah, I mean, I think he struggled at times during camp adjusting to that, but once he kind of got with it, I mean, I think he has really learned and come along well. But they looked at Felix and they knew about the injury ahead of time, so they were really targeting for Felix, 2024 being the year that he steps up and becomes either a big contributor or a starter. I mean, we'll see how he competes, where he fits in. But that was, to me, probably a classic case of looking at who you're losing, knowing that, Mike Dan is going to be a free agent and you're probably not going to be able to keep him. Well, if that's the case, what are you doing? You're drafting his replacement. You also, you had a gap there anyway with, losing Frank Clark. So yeah, I mean, that was drafting for the future. I mean, that wasn't a 1-year fix for Felix. So I don't think to me, I don't consider him a disappointment in any way. I think it is just an incomplete grade, and that's okay. See what happens next year. And honestly, if there's an injury, I feel like the Chiefs trust Felix enough that they could give him more work, but they're not going to just shove him out there for the sake of shoving him out there. I mean, they're gonna let the other guys have their snaps, and if Felix's time is next year, it's next year. So we shall see. Going back to Bert, should the Chiefs sign Zach Ertz? For the right price, yeah. I mean, they still, remember, have almost zero money. Let's go. I'm going to look at the official NFLPA salary cap, because that's usually a little bit different than you will see it over the cap or some of the other sites. But Chiefs are, I think, around 2.2 million under the cap. Now Zach Ertz would be prorated, but yeah, I mean, you can't pay him a ton of money. So if this comes down to Zach Ertz wanting to play for a playoff contender and make some coin, Chiefs won't be the team he chooses. I think he'll go somewhere else. And, I know obviously the Eagles are interested. The Eagles are in the same place. I mean, the Eagles have 2.6 million in cap space. There are some other teams out there that might have a little bit more room. So I'd sign him at an affordable rate, at a rate that is risk-free. Now, the Chiefs can't throw a lot of money, so almost anything that Zach Ertz would take would be enough for me. So, yeah, I say sign him. I mean, it's for the only price that they can afford, that's a risk-free investment. So, even if Zach is past his prime, which I think arguably he is, it's still it's worth a shot. So bring him in. See, I'd be fine with it. Bumpa coming back. Should Drew or Bolton be the middle linebacker? Should they play together? You could do that. I think the only catch is, I mean, Drew can play any of the three spots, but I think they really like the rotation that they've got right now, in that I think they're more comfortable with Willie Gay in that weak side spot, just a little bit more athletic than Drew is. They're more comfortable with Leo on the strong side because he's pound for pound, as I'm told, the strongest guy on the team. Maybe just the strongest guy on the team, regardless of pound for pound. Leo's got some guns. He's got some muscles. So those guys are just so well suited to those roles. And but when it comes to the Mike position, I like Drew. I mean, he could very well be one of the top 32 middle linebackers in the league. He's just in a bad place because Nick's a really good player too. They've got different skill sets, different pluses and minuses, but I would take Bolton as the starter if healthy, for sure. Even, and right now, obviously they're both a little bit dinged up, but going forward, no. I mean, all things being equal, I would want Nick Bolton in that spot. And Bert siding right in here with the status on Drew Tranquill. He is in the concussion protocol. We'll see if he's able to get out on the field this week. Doesn't sound like it's too severe that he's I think he's going to be back in decent fashion. I mean, this doesn't sound like it's going to be anything long term. It did appear. I mean, you hate to make too many presumptions about this and severity of concussions, but usually a good rule of thumb is that if a player, if they just go straight back to the locker room for a concussion evaluation, that's a bad sign. That usually means it was a really bad bell ring, or there is something physically that they're demonstrating that tells the the neurological consultant that, hey, no, this is not, I mean, this is definitely a concussion. Let's go ahead and take him back and do the full exam, but there's no reason to do the easy temporary exam kind of on the sideline in the blue tent. At least with Drew, they did take him to the tent to give him that exam. If he goes back to the locker room, it means he didn't pass that one. So clearly it was borderline enough that it wasn't severe enough that they felt like they had to take him straight back to the locker room. So that's, at least from what we've seen, you can glean that that's a good indication. But it still looked like he was, I mean, a little slow to respond from that one. So, and I think the Chiefs are going to be, pretty comfortable, pretty easy on him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he missed the game, just as a precaution, but it doesn't look like it's too severe. So, cross your fingers on that one as well. Bumpa, who from this current roster room do you see being on the team next season? Only thinking of for Rasheed, Watson, and Tony stay. Yeah, probably a pretty good guess. I mean, I would once again, I mean, if Richie James is going to be back, I would think they'd be playing him more. So I would say there's reasonable chance he's not. I think Skyy, absolutely. I mean, you've got control of him as a young player. I would still count on him being a part of that mix. But if you want to put him out there on the market and see if somebody will trade for him because you think that a change of scenery would be good for him, you consider it. But I wouldn't be giving up on Skyy quite yet. Tony is also a young, he's on his rookie contract, so you still have a year control for him. You don't have to necessarily exercise his 5th-year option, which you'll have to make a decision on that this year, but I can't imagine that being done. We'll see, but and Watson, probably borderline. I mean, I think that, if you needed to move on, you wanted to get younger, you wanted a different player there, you could, but Justin Watson, I mean, is reliable. So no, I wouldn't have any trouble with him coming back either. Even though you haven't really gotten the production that you've wanted this year. Maybe it's just, him being in the right mix. And so, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say no to those guys, but I think it's reasonable that those three, and Skyy's probably going to be, like I said, be in the mix too. I mean, it's not necessarily going to be a completely renovated room, but you're still going to see new faces. I mean, they're going to put some draft picks. They will bring in probably either a free agent or, look at the trade market. There are some interesting names on the free agent market, but they're not going to be cheap. And then you start looking at other guys, and that's, yeah, I mean, there's a few big name free agents that are going to be out there, but they're going to be pricey. So, that's why I say, hey, Brett Veach will look at everything. And so if they trade for a veteran receiver, it wouldn't surprise me. Kelly, list of call the way it is and just be the truth. Andy Reid has lost a step with the offense, and it shows on the field. Lack of play calling, and that's the truth. I don't know if I can go there, Kelly. And here's a big part of it is that, with the troubles and struggles that this offense has had, and I think if you ask the players and the coaches this in just a moment of honesty and strap them to a lie detector, I think they would all confirm and tell you that the troubles that they're having right now aren't one person's fault. They're a lot of people's fault. And there's plenty of blame to go around. Has the offensive line been perfect? No. Has Patrick Mahomes been perfect? No. Have the receivers been perfect? No. Have their tight ends been perfect? No. Has the play calling been perfect? No. There has been a disconnect. But I can't say that I see that Andy Reid has lost a step. I mean, I think that sometimes, obviously, you can make wrong choices, and I think there obviously been some times when they thought that some things would work and that they didn't. A great example is last week against the Raiders, they came out with their script, which normally the Chiefs, especially this season. I mean, once again, you look at it, Chiefs, their script has usually been pretty good. And it's when they start getting later into the game and you get into the flow and you start changing the play calling a little bit that they've struggled. I mean, look at this, the early, the stretch in the season when they couldn't get anything done in the second half and they were getting the ball and moving the ball in the first half. Well, that was the opening script. I mean, that's where usually Andy Reid's got his best stuff and is most effective and is such a brilliant offensive mind. against the Raiders last week, they made a choice to go with some slower developing stuff, some screenplays. And I don't think they really took into account that the Raiders were pretty fired up for that game. And it was strangely a pro Raiders crowd in Vegas, which the Raiders never have. That Raiders team last week came in with more energy and juice than I've seen from the Raiders in a long time. And that opening script with a lot of slow developing plays and, some screens and all of that were exactly the wrong calls at the wrong time. And Andy Reid, to his credit, I said it with that opening script, you had to do it over again. He would have changed it a little bit. So I don't see that, because I also see all the other problems with this offense. That there are decisions that everybody's making, whether it's the quarterback, whether it's the receivers, the offensive line. Hey, there's going to be some evaluation of the assistant staff this year too. I mean, when you have sky high expectations, as we all do for this offense, and the Chiefs have sky high expectations for themselves. When you don't meet them, no matter how high the expectations are, when you don't meet them, there's going to be there's going to be accountability, and there's going to be a response, and that'll happen. And it's happening right now. But I don't think that, like I said, I don't see Andy Reid losing a step. I see his mind still there. With this, and I still think that the rest of the league considers him one of the best offensive minds around. Honestly, Andy Reid could still probably lose 20% of off his best, and he'd still be one of the better offensive coaches around. But that doesn't mean you're going to be perfect all the time. And this season's a good example. They've made some choices that didn't work out. They're trying to fix it. We'll see. I wouldn't have any concerns whatsoever in investing and staying with Andy Reid in the future. Going any direction just sounds crazy to me. We'll see what happens, but I don't see the same thing, Kelly. Like I said, I see a lot of problems, and hey, is the play calling been perfect? No. There have been mistakes, but I think every team makes those mistakes, and it's how you learn from it and how you adjust. And that's how this season will be determined. If the Chiefs can make the adjustments over the next 5 games and into the playoffs, obviously you'll feel a lot better about everybody, including the head coach. Ben Davidson. Ben, I view Richie James as a glimmer of hope to support Kelce and Rice now that he's healthy. Do you think Andy will try to involve him more? Obviously, this is a question we get a lot. I think, we had a couple times tonight, and we had it last week too. I think we're going to continue to get Richie James questions until the end of the season, or until they start putting him out there. I once again, man, I want to see him. I really do. I'd like to see him out there. I think he's got some abilities. Get the ball to him in space. I think he can do some things. I'm just so surprised that they haven't. So we'll see what happens. But I would, and maybe it is. He was out for 8 games, so maybe the last 2 weeks have been just an example of them letting him get his feet under him as far as being a part of special teams. But it's to me, it needs to happen at some point. You've gone a lot of different directions and given guys an opportunity, and maybe they're seeing something that we don't, because none of us, here in the media, we only get to see about 5 minutes to 10 minutes of practice during the week. We only see drills. We don't see the 11 on 11. We don't see any of the scrimmage plays. So maybe they're seeing something that we don't see. What I saw in training camp in the preseason was a guy who could get things done. So I don't know. And they have more information than I do, for sure, about making those decisions. And if they never go to Richie James, there's got to be a reason for it. I just don't know what it is yet. Going to Flapjack City. Yeah, I heard the fine going to be $40,000 for Isaiah. That's in the ballpark. 40 to 50, I think, is the ballpark for a penalty like that. It's all in the CBA, so there's not a whole lot of leeway. Sometimes the commissioner has a little things that they can do, or they can put it in classify it under a different penalty. But no, it's pretty much all dedicated. If I get a chance to, I'll look it up in the CBA and see what it is. But yeah, that's the ballpark. And Isaiah is making, pull his base salary up here real quick. It's not much. I want to say it's probably $840, maybe less than that. I can never remember the year by year breakdowns of the minimum salary. 870. Oh, it was so close. But do your 870 divided by 18 weeks. That's how the players get paid, and you're talking. He makes $48,000 a week. So if he gets paid $40,000, he gets fined $40,000. He would get an $8,000 paycheck this week, which I mean, it's a lot of money to us, but then again, if you go from 40 to 8, that's a hit, and not as big a deal for the guys making millions, but 7th round rookie contract. Nah, it's a little tougher. So feel for the guy, but as Andy said, you just can't do it. You can't do it. So let's see. Kelly, I miss Jody Fortson. You're not alone. A lot of people miss Jody Fortson, and I just miss him from being the good guy standpoint. Haven't seen him in the locker room. Sometimes when guys who are injured, I mean, they have a schedule of their own. They will come in for their rehab, but they're not necessarily always around. Sometimes they even go elsewhere for their rehab. And I haven't seen Jody around, so I don't know if he's doing his rehab in Kansas City or elsewhere. For instance, Najee Johnson had been doing his rehab elsewhere, and he came back last week, and that was a nice moment to see. He came into the locker room, and guys who hadn't seen him in a while, they were really excited to have him back in the room. That was nice. There was some ribbing. Justin Reid was like, "Hey, you're still around here?" They were giving him a hard time, but they were all happy to have him back. And seeing that is it's good. I mean, Jody Fortson's a great locker room presence. He's a fun player to have around, and a fun person to have around. So I wish him the best. I mean, I just miss him from that standpoint because he's fun to talk to. Bump it. What's your reason for still believing in Skyy? Biggest thing is just that, I mean, I've seen him be a good player on the field. And yeah, I mean, do I have concerns? Because it's the tough thing with receivers, because receivers can really impress you when you're not getting hit. And, I joked in the past, and, because hey, it was seemed like 4 years in a row we were talking every June about the breakout season for Demarcus Robinson, because I don't think anybody ever owned OTAs as much as Demarcus Robinson. Every year it seemed like he just absolutely blew our doors off. It's like, how is this guy not going to be able to convert this into the season, into just being a big time player? And Skyy is the same way. I mean, you see, he's obviously a hard worker. He's got the skills. And he makes the plays on the practice field. So, why doesn't it translate to the field? It's different for every guy. And I don't know, I'm not around him all the time for sure, but you see enough you can see that there's something there, and the Chiefs still have confidence in him too. I mean, clearly they haven't benched him. So that's another part of it to me as well. I mean, if they thought that there was nothing there with Skyy Moore, I mean, there'd be no reason not to, swap his Richie James' snap count, so that it's Richie James getting 43 and Skyy Moore getting 6. The Chiefs still believe in that. I mean, I think that, and obviously they have an investment in him from a draft standpoint and a teaching standpoint. They want to try and get something out of it. So, like I said, I still see that there's something in there, and if you can tap into it and get it out of it, you might as well. I mean, that's why I wouldn't. And you have control over him, and he's an affordable player. So to me, there's no reason to close the door until you absolutely have to. And I don't think Skyy's there yet. Kelly, finishing up your comment about Jody Fortson. Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. He did some good things. Mike, why isn't Mahomes throwing to Kelce more frequently, especially in the red zone? Is Kelce getting old? He's been blamed on TV recently of getting old. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, Travis, at least from outside, I think you've seen more frustration from Travis this year, and I think a lot of that probably circles back to the injury. I mean, I don't think that there's any doubt that he's not as healthy as he has been in the past. And that hyperextension that he suffered, I think pretty much baked the cake that he was going to be less than 100% all year. Now, the other part about why isn't he getting the ball more frequently, especially since those Chargers and Broncos games, where those two teams, for whatever reason, decided to play a lot of man and single coverage on Travis for some crazy idea. He has been absolutely mobbed by defenses. I mean, to the point where it's not only that he's getting double teamed on pretty much every snap, whether it's, he's running against some zones, but then there's going to be one player who's playing man on Travis Kelce. So he's generally had two players around him the entire time, but then they're also chipping him at the line of scrimmage, and trying to get their hands on him and knock him off path. So it's been hard for him. I mean, he's having to work harder than he had to. He said he's going to play until the wheels fall off, and I believe him because I know how much he loves the game. And I think there's another part of it too, which is that because this offense is struggling, I think Travis feels a responsibility to be out there and be out there for Patrick. He played, I think, 88% of the snaps the other night. That's a lot for Travis at his age. I know the Chiefs would prefer to have him at 80% or under, but they still, by the large, give him carte blanche for taking himself off the field. Usually the only time he's going to come off is if he realizes he's gassed and he's run along. He's had a couple of tough plays, or he's had a long route that he's run and needs to come off. Sometimes there's packages that don't have him in it, so that can always be a part of it. But by and large, the Chiefs let Travis judge his own playing time. And right now, because he feels like Patrick needs him out there, I think he's trying to play more. And that's maybe not the best for him. And, I'll be interested to see if maybe that does change in the next couple of weeks, whether it's the coaches who are going to be telling him, hey, manage your time a little bit better. Don't put yourself into some bad situations. I could see that, but there's still plenty left. I mean, I think that, some of the performances he's had earlier this season shows that there's plenty left in that tank. I just think he's getting beat up. And like Jack here says, Kelce's hurting. He is. I mean, and like I said, I don't think he was ever, once that hyperextension happened, I don't think there was ever a chance of him being 100% this year. So that's just not going to happen. Casey Harold, thank you. I truly appreciate you, becoming a member. That is awesome. I truly appreciate you. I will hope you make sure that you get everything you deserve out of that. You and I know Jack and Garrett White, new member. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate it. I know Jack has been great out there gifting some memberships. That is absolutely awesome. Could not do this without all of you coming along for the ride. I'm not the Kansas City Star. I know I've said this before, so if you've heard me say it, I'm not the Kansas City Star. I'm not ESPN, not The Athletic. I'm truly independent, doing this on my own business, everything. So, the support from all of you truly means a great deal to me. And so the kind words, the support, the memberships, the super thanks, that is all awesome. I truly appreciate you. Let's see if we can catch up back where we were. After I know Jack said Kelce's hurting, and I completely agree. A1 Buds, how much of this wide receiver room's lack of talent due to Andy viewing the wide receiver position as a position of luxury? Does this thinking have to change in today's NFL? I don't think that they view it that way. And, a lot of it still is going to be on Brett Veach. I mean, Brett's in complete control of the personnel. I mean, and Andy is going to look at film. I mean, he will do something. He'll have his input, but it's really up to Brett and his staff as far as, finding the talent, whether it's free agents, whether it's in the draft, making sure that it works under a salary cap. I mean, Andy's not the one out there watching film and then coming to Brett and saying, hey, we need to go get this guy. It's the other way around. I mean, Brett will do the work and the research and then bring the film tape to Andy and say, hey, do you think you can use this guy? That's the way that it goes. So, I mean, it falls on Brett. And Brett, when they signed Sammy Watkins, one of the things that he said at that point was that he was always going to make sure that Patrick had weapons. And has he let him down this year? I mean, I think you would say yes, because they haven't gotten the performance. But I don't think it was because they viewed it as, that it was a position of luxury. I mean, there's a lot of things that changed. I mean, their 2-year plan certainly changed, because even go back 18 months, almost when the Tyreek Hill trade went down. I mean, you go back and take yourself back to March 2022, March 1st, 2022, let's say. Chiefs thought that this team was going to have Tyreek Hill on it. That's the way they were building their roster. That was the way they were building their salary cap and structuring things and making decisions, was based on Tyreek Hill being here. That changes. And now you have to change your entire room and your entire approach. And I mean, this is not the point fingers or anything, but I think I alluded to this earlier, but the Chiefs thought they were going to be able to get a deal with Chris Jones done much earlier in the offseason as far as a long-term extension. And had they done that, they would have had money to go out and get another free agent, another veteran free agent. Would it have been DeAndre Hopkins? I can't say for sure. Were they interested? Sure. But there was no way that could happen without the Chris Jones deal getting done. So that's the way, sometimes this business, sometimes that's the way that it unfolds. And the Chiefs, when you're winning and you've got a lot of guys making the money against the cap that they do, you don't have a lot of room to be able to move on a dime. I mean, I don't want to call it the Titanic because that's the wrong comparison, but it's like, hey, an NFL roster, especially with the salary cap, is like an oil tanker. You get going through the Suez Canal. If you get something that comes up the works, you can't necessarily turn that boat around on a dime. I mean, it's a lot of moving parts that you have to go to. And so I don't think that this was the wide receiver room that the Chiefs necessarily envisioned building back in March. It's the one they have, but I think it's a lot of pieces. Like I said, I think that ultimately, hey, Brett Veach will tell you he's accountable for this. This is the room that he built. But I don't think that this was plan A. I'm not sure it was plan B, maybe even plan C. I don't know. But they will, I think, rest assured, there's going to be, changes in the off season. And I'm not trying to be an excuse guy. I'm not trying to be one of those, just trying to be fair and, to everybody. Just say, hey, with these receivers, sometimes it might work somewhere else. Maybe it will. And maybe, maybe it's just the wrong time, wrong place. You never know. And even with Patrick, it doesn't mean that every receiver is going to be a perfect fit. So they've had some bad luck with the receiver room this year. It certainly didn't go the way that they planned, but I don't think it's their view on the position or how they rate it, but will you see a maybe renewed focus on the position this offseason? Yeah, I think you will. Didn't we hear Skyy was 10 times better than he was last year? That's all I heard. I mean, yeah, like I said, I kind of go back to the DeMarcus Robinson comparison. That was justified. I mean, Skyy, to me, absolutely looked, and I would agree. I would, even hyperbole aside, I would say if you said Skyy looked 10 times better this year in training camp than he did as a rookie, I'd absolutely agree. He looked fantastic in training camp. He looked so comfortable. Why it's not translating onto the field during the season, I'm not sure that Skyy can explain it. I'm not sure the Chiefs can explain it. I can't tell you why. I mean, you do get to a point that if it happens long enough, you have to readjust your thinking. But Skyy did. I mean, I did not see him having this kind of year. I thought he was going to have a much better year, and certainly the Chiefs did too. Mike, go back to the conversation with Jack about Kelce hurting. I mean, like I said, he is in pain, but also Travis Kelce's just pretty freaking good. So, and Jack has a good point. I mean, yeah, he's getting double teamed and triple teamed a lot. Let's see. We'll move on to another topic since we talked a lot about Kelce and how he's doing. Yes, Kevin, on a positive note, Butker is perfect and Pro Bowl bound. Him and Pacheco are the only guys on offense that want to win this year. Well, don't worry, they all want to win. But Butker, I think, is absolutely an underperforming or underreported story. Just how well he's kicking. I mean, he is he's got a chance to break an NFL record with the 17 game schedule. Because no kicker in the short term, the history that we've had a 17 game season, has gone perfect on field goals and extra points through an entire 17 game season. He could do that this year. Mike Vanderjagt and Gary Anderson did it for 16 games. But Harrison's got a chance. This is absolutely his best year. And coming after last year, I know how important that is to him. He really wanted to bounce back, and he absolutely has. So I think that's a big story. And Pacheco has been playing great too. I mean, there is absolutely. I will give you that one. There's nobody that plays harder and runs harder than Isaiah Pacheco. He is one of those guys who is fun to watch. So yeah, absolutely. And I think Michael was kind of pounded with Pacheco. He is a tough dude. I would absolutely do that too. Might be my only really regret for this team on Sundays that as well as they ran the ball in the first half, gosh, they just could have run it more in the second half and especially in the fourth quarter. I think they might have been able to get that one done against Green Bay. But Jack out there gifting memberships to the Chiefs Digest YouTube. You are so kind. I hope people are out there being able to take advantage of your generosity. David, do you see Veach overhauling the wide receiver room similar to how he did the offensive line after the Tampa Bay Super Bowl loss? Yeah, I mean, I really do. I don't know if it's going to be as pronounced as that was, where, it really the entire line pretty much overturned, and you put a couple of draft picks into it. Could the Chiefs draft 2 wide receivers next year? Yeah, possible. But I do think that they're going to put a lot of resources into that room this offseason, and so it would not surprise me to see a veteran, wouldn't surprise me to see trade, wouldn't surprise me to see draft picks. Patrick is the franchise, and they have invested a lot of resources over the last few years to give him a defense. Obviously, after Tampa Bay, they invested a lot to give him an offensive line. That has come at a cost. It certainly has. And like I alluded to earlier, I mean, this was never plan A. Plan A was Tyreek Hill was going to be on this team. Plan B was probably another veteran. Once you say goodbye to Tyreek, go in a different direction. Things didn't work out. So yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if like I said, I don't know if it's going to be as dramatic as overhaul as the offensive line was, but yes, I think that you can safely say that there will be a pretty good remake of this room in the offseason. I had to bring this one up because Darius Fountains, I really liked Darius. He was a lot of fun to cover. Good, hardworking young guy. Him, Amir Smith-Marset. Kind of nice to see them in maybe a Chiefs uniform right now. It's Darius is a good kid. Reese is a good kid. He'd be fun to have back. Garrett, welcome as a member. Glad to have you. That is awesome. Thank you very much. Brian, will Spags activate Pennell to help with run defense? Also against Bills, will Spags use Connor more towards the line of scrimmage? A couple of good questions. I mean, that's one thing that I have been surprised about the last 2 years because, the Chiefs had Danny Shelton on the practice squad for the longest time and never brought him up, for a game day elevation in some games where they needed some run defense help. With Buffalo, I'm assuming that the Tiger is not going to change his stripes, so I don't think so. I mean, I think that Pennell is really there for a lot of depth, especially if they get some injuries. I think that's where Mike Pennell would come in. I think otherwise they're going to stick with what they've got. And one thing I'll say about James Cook and Buffalo and running offense, it's a little bit more speed based. So to me, I don't know if Pennell's the guy that I want, but I think you need to be on the lookout, especially for what the Packers did as far as, doing some outside runs and challenging the edges and pushing the ball outside, really stretching the Chiefs defense horizontally. I think that's what you got to expect from Buffalo. I mean, I think they're going to, focus on some outside runs. And in that case, that's where you really need your linebackers, your corners, and your safeties to be ready to play with the run defense. And yeah, I mean, Shamari Connor would not surprise me if we saw a little bit more of him, especially with Brian Cook's injury. And Connor, like I talked about earlier, they've really enjoyed using him in that kind of dime safety role as a slot corner and playing up on the line. So would not surprise me. I would be interested to see if they end up playing maybe a little bit more man this week than they did against Green Bay. They played a little bit as, it seemed like a lot of times when they were playing some zone against the Packers, the Packers were just attacking specific parts of the zones. And really what they were doing is Jordan Love, for the most part, was identifying where Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed were and was going anywhere else with the ball. And that's an adjustment the Chiefs are going to have to make. I mean, it's getting to the point where those two guys are getting so much attention, and certainly L'Jarius has been so good. I imagine he'll be on Stephon Diggs all game Sunday. Those two corners are playing so good that other guys are getting targeted, and now they need to step up. And if Connor being in there might be what they need, but you do have to be able to ready to play the run. You got to be ready for Josh Allen taking off the ball too. So we'll see. This is going to be a tough outing. I mean, I think the Chiefs can get it done this weekend, but Buffalo is going to be bringing everything that they've got. And with the new offensive coordinator and Joe Brady, you only got 2 games worth to really, see what they're doing. He's going to have a lot of wrinkles. So this is not going to be easy for the Chiefs at all. Dennis, Chris Jones, is he worth $30 million a year? He is good. He's top 10, not a top 5. I would still put Chris Jones probably, as far as interior defensive lineman, I would put him top 5. You say all defensive linemen, I'd probably say still top 10. I mean, Chris is that good. I mean, and don't even necessarily look at the numbers because he's getting double teamed almost every single week. And there's more than a couple of times each week you watch the film and you watch the replays and you watch the coach's film, and you'll see Chris Jones just absolutely obliterating a double team and getting into the backfield, and breaking up a play or forcing a pass. I mean, he's still good. So, I mean, he's getting older, and that's where I think and that's where the $30 million question comes in. I mean, can a team pay a player like Chris Jones into his 30s, $30 million a year? I mean, that's kind of the going rate for the top players along the defensive line. A little bit less for interior player, but Chris will tell you he's a hybrid, that he's not a true defensive tackle, that he will play anywhere. And obviously he does play a lot on the edge. So, but yeah, I mean, if I'm a GM paying $30 million a year to almost anybody but a quarterback, I would have some heartburn. But Chris Jones might be one of those unicorns that you pay, but then it circles back. When you get the best quarterback in the league and you're paying him like the best quarterback in the league, and you got the best tight end in the league and you're paying him like that, got one of the best left guards in the league, you're paying him like that. You got the best center in the league that you need to give a new contract to. You got a great right guard. You got a great middle linebacker, both the 2 guys you need to give contracts to. It's, where do you cut it off? And that's where the Chiefs will have to make a decision. I just want to thank Casey Harold again, because coming up in the stream here, thank you very much for becoming a member, and everybody who's become a member tonight, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. Aim straight. Oh, here I'm just putting up the compliments. That's very, very cheap of me, but thank you. For those of you who have not yet found it, yes, Nick Jacobs over at KSHB 41 and I, we have been doing our own podcast this season, a post-game podcast. After every game, because of our schedules, we don't sometimes get to do it immediately after the game. Sometimes it's the Monday morning, Tuesday morning, depending on the schedules. But either after the game or the next day after the game, you will find us in your feed. And obviously Nick is one of the best minds out there when it comes to watching film, watching the Chiefs, breaking everything down. He loves the Chiefs, and it shows. He does such a good job, and he's a good guy. So doing a show with him has been absolutely a blast. We've been talking about wanting to do it for years, and we finally got an opportunity to. So I hope you all, if you get a chance to give it a listen, please. I appreciate you. I think you'll enjoy it because we have a lot of fun. Yes, Jack, with those memberships and those gifts, that is super kind of you, sir. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Hefe in Kansas City, thanking you. Super kind of you. I truly appreciate it. Going on about an hour and 10, so I'll probably be wrapping up here pretty soon. If there's any more questions, feel free to fire them away. I was going to circle back and just make sure it wasn't anything I missed over on social media, because I know I had asked for a couple of questions, and I knew that there were I saw a couple out there. One of them we addressed as far as, Chiefs' interest in Zach Ertz. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly legitimate interest in him. We'll see if anything gets done. It might be tough. And yeah, not that I'm telling you anybody to go away, but yes, I do know now that How About Those Chiefs does a Q&A on Tuesdays at the same time. So might not do an 8 o'clock again to move away just so we're not going up against each other. But he was asking about what are a few of the biggest reasons, in your opinion, for the Chiefs' lack of consistent production from the receiver room. And I mean, that's the $1 million question right now. And the thing is that I don't think it's any one thing. I do think that it's systemic to a degree. I mean, it's been a lot of problems, and it doesn't mean the Chiefs can't fix it, but it just means that they've had a lot of things go wrong, things that haven't been perfect. I mean, they have had injuries, they have had inconsistent play. They have had issues in play calling. They have had, inconsistencies in pass blocking. Now, Andy Reid will tell you, and I can't disagree with him, that their problems are not necessarily the receiver room, but the situations that they have put themselves into. That if you mitigate the penalties, you mitigate the turnovers, you don't shoot yourselves in the foot so that you're putting yourself into a hole where you've got 2nd and 15 and 3rd and 8s, that you're not getting these penalties that put you in a hole and kill drives. Those are legitimate reasons, and that absolutely does spill into the performance that you get from your receiver room. Because if you have putting yourself in a lot of 2nd and longs and 3rd and longs, those are difficult plays to make. And there's nobody in the league, by the way, I would doubt, that spends more time working on 3rd and longs than the Kansas City Chiefs. There's 2 hallmarks of an Andy Reid training camp. And one of them is the long drive, which used to be like long drive day, where, you would have a practice or two where the Chiefs would, run 19 straight plays for the ones. And now, it's basically almost every practice that they have a long drive of 12 or more plays, that'll go up to maybe 17 or 18 plays. But they'll do one almost every day. And that's part of it, is just, it's building that muscle memory. It's challenging guys to make them work and sweat and think in those situations. And it's designed to try and get them to where, when there are tough situations, when you're down by 13 in December, or, you need to go 13 plays and 75 yards in 6 minutes, that you can do that because you did it in training camp. That's one. The other is that they spend more time working behind the chains than I think I've ever heard a team in training camp. There will be a 3rd and long period. Not every training camp practice, but most of them. That is 3rd and long, red zone. Those are some of the most, common situations that the Chiefs work in training camp. And so, they've done it, but when you consistently do that in games and you put yourselves in those situations, and even if it's just once, it's enough to kill a drive. And Andy Reid will tell you, and I would agree, that, hey, 3rd and 3 is a lot easier to make a play than 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 12. And so, to a degree, I do agree with that if the Chiefs, if they could reduce their penalties, and this was, in my piece I did at the break on, my bold predictions for the second half of the season, the Chiefs, to me, could average 27 points a game. But what would they have to do? They would have to roll back their penalties and turnovers to basically the same rate that they had last year. And that would be about a 40% decrease in both turnovers and penalties. And if they did that, offense wouldn't have a lot of problems. So now, doing it is easier said than done, and that's been their problem. But it's, to me, the receiver room, it's been a lot of things, and I don't necessarily think it's entirely on the receivers. Everybody's got a piece of it, as Andy Reid would like to say. Paul, any chance of extending Sneed next year? That's the big question that is going to come up. He is a free agent after this season, and to me, I've said it before, until I see Brett Veach get a long-term deal done with one of his free agents, or one of the team's free agents, after they've played out their rookie contract, it'll be the first time. Because, the Chiefs under Brett Veach, there's only two players that they have essentially gotten long-term deals done with after, or in the normal process of whether it's after year 3 after rookie deal or after year 4 with the franchise tag. The only two are Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes that were done as part of the normal path of things. Like Patrick's extension, the first one got done after year 3. That's the earliest you can do one. Chris obviously had to, after year 4 in the franchise tag, and they got the deal done then. But everyone else that has entered the 4th year of their rookie contract and has gone to free agency, and none of them have come back on a long-term deal. They've come back on 1-year deals. Well, L'Jarius Sneed's not coming back on a 1-year deal. He has played himself into a big-time contract this offseason. And, the fact that Chiefs, whether they were not able to last year in the offseason or, didn't try to, obviously L'Jarius has had some injury issues and some knee questions. To his credit, he's played through all of them. So, there's no toughness question there about L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, he's one of the toughest guys that I've ever covered. So you have to have a lot of respect for that, but he's just going to have a lot of leverage. And I mean, especially you got one franchise tag, Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed. That's a tough call for me. I mean, you can make a case for obviously both of them, but you only got one, and yeah, I mean, you could tag one and trade. I mean, I wouldn't want to do that to either one of them. I mean, I wouldn't want to tag and trade L'Jarius Sneed, but yeah, I think it's going to be difficult to get done because I think L'Jarius is going to get a big time contract offer, and that's one of the things that I have not been critical of Brett about the resources put into the cornerback room, because I know what they have tried to do and couldn't necessarily get things done at times, but they've tried to put resources. They've been willing to pay some players. It's just been a matter of getting things done. But L'Jarius Sneed's probably going to be like a $15-16 million player, and are the Chiefs willing and able to put that money into the cornerback spot? I don't know that they are, but I also know that they feel like that they're pretty good shape. I mean, do they have another L'Jarius Sneed? I mean, Trent McDuffie's really good, but would you like to have both those guys? Sure. But they've got a lot of faith in their young guys too. So they're going to have to bet on them. I mean, I think you're going to have to bet on Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams and Najee Johnson coming back, and hoping that you can get production from them, because I think it's going to be tough to keep L'Jarius. And that's why I say for him and Chris Jones too, and some of the other free agents that they've got this year, enjoy him now, because you may not always have him, but L'Jarius is a guy that you should absolutely treasure. Bart, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words. That was very kind of you. And Jack, once again, thank you for those memberships. Looks like some people are absolutely enjoying them. We'll wrap up here in a couple of minutes, but get a couple more questions in. And if there's anybody else that's got anything, fire away and let me know. Gavin asks, it's Andy's play, so I don't mean this in a rude way, but that's what does Matt Nagy actually do? Do you think losing Eric B to Washington is a bigger deal than we all know? I mean, and I touched on that a little bit too earlier, so I won't rehash the whole thing with Eric, but I don't know if it's a bigger deal, but I mean, I do think that the Chiefs probably miss his edge. I mean, are they missing it? But I mean, there's nobody in that coaching staff that does what Eric does, because there's very few coaches that do what Eric Bieniemy does. I mean, just from a motivation standpoint and from a accountability standpoint, I mean, all coaches hold players accountable in different ways. But Eric had a style that was different, and I do think it works for some players, and there's some players probably doesn't work for, but I do. I mean, I think they do miss having something like that. It is something that I think that they could use, and they've got. I mean, there are other. Don't get me wrong. There's other coaches on this coaching staff that I think have the same kind of fire. Dave Merritt, for instance, on the defensive side, has that same kind of mentality that Eric Bieniemy does. Joe Cullen has that same kind of attitude that those guys do. Is there anybody on the offensive staff? I don't think there is, with the experience, and that's not a slam against Matt Nagy. I think Matt's just a different kind of coach. But he definitely holds people accountable. He has high standards, but is he gonna maybe rip into guys the way that Eric Bieniemy would? No, I mean he's got a different voice and a different style, so it's apples and oranges. But I do think that, hey, I mean, there's probably a little bit something. I mean, is that all? No. But hey, how does the play calling work? I mean, yeah, Andy calls the plays, but as he will tell you, I mean, the game planning process for Andy Reid is a very collaborative effort. So a lot of, a big part of what like Matt Nagy does is, I mean, for lack of a better word, maybe probably the administrative part of it. He's the one that, puts together the game plans. He kind of translates what, Andy's directions are and puts them into action and kind of pulls everything together. It's kind of his job to bring in everything, to make sure that the analytics information gets brought in, that, the assistants are in the loop. But when they game plan, there's usually a handful of, of the assistant coaches who are in the room putting it together. So Andy Reid, part of it, Matt is part of it, quarterback coach David Girardi is part of it, Joe Blameyer, one of their offensive analyst assistants, is part of it. Andy Heck gets into it, especially as far as the run game goes. Eric Bieniemy used to be a part of it when he was the running backs coach. I don't know how much like Connor Embry and Todd Pinkston as first year position coaches are getting involved, but there's usually 5 or 6. Back in the heyday, maybe the Alex Smith era, when there was kind of the brain trust there of Andy Reid, you had Matt, you had Brad Childress. There was like 4 of them who would put the game plan together every week. Right now, I think it's a little bit larger, so I think it's about 5 coaches now. But they're the ones, and they put it all together and debate it. I mean, they're the ones that then after the game plan's all together and they've done all the practice every week, on Friday night afternoon and Saturday, they'll bring Mahomes in and they will all just go around the game plan and say, okay, 4 minutes left, first half, we've got the ball at the 25, what are we going to call? Or, hey, it's 3rd and 1 midway through the third quarter. What's our play? What are we going to do? I mean, they go through all those scenarios. So, I mean, that's where Matt Nagy, really, comes in, because he's the one that's in charge of all of that. Andy Reid's in charge of the big ship and he's got the other pieces to be a part of. But, the offensive coordinator, for a big part of it, is just keeping everything organized and making sure that Andy Reid's got all the information that he needs to make those decisions. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's a bigger deal than just, who calls plays. Yeah. Andy Reid calls the plays. Matt Nagy calls it into Patrick Mahomes through the helmet and everything. Is it a little convoluted? Maybe. I mean, the Chiefs have done it in the past where Andy would put the plays in directly, but it's also, this is one thing about the Chiefs and the way that they do call plays and game planning, that there's never really much of a surprise. They pretty much know exactly what they're going to call. They're with the play sheet. They know exactly what play they're going to call in specific situations. Patrick will ask for specific plays in specific situations, but they usually have gone over that before and everything. So, I hope that helps. I mean, no, I didn't think it was rude, but Matt, what do you do when the head coach calls plays? It does. I mean, it's a little bit different role for an offensive coordinator, but there's a lot more to the job than calling plays. And honestly, I mean, most of the work that goes into putting together the game plan during the week and preparing it all, Andy's got 51% control, but Matt's really the one that is the guy who's responsible for making sure that everything is put together right, making sure that everybody knows what's on the play sheet, that everybody's comfortable with it, and that they're on the same page. So it's a big role. It's a big job. It's probably more admin, it seems like sometimes, than maybe the fun parts of the job. But I obviously, Andy's pretty comfortable with Matt and gets along with him well and feels like he does a good job. So Matt probably gets a lot of blame for things that aren't his fault. I mean, if you're unhappy with the play calling, Andy Reid will tell you he's in charge of the play calling. But Matt is definitely, for me, I mean, being around, certainly is one of the more organized and more detail oriented guys. And I think that's why Andy likes him so much and why he's been a part of his organization for such a long time. Don't see any other questions, but I appreciate all the kind words out there. Hey, Bart, Chiefs now fan for 54 years. That is awesome. You probably have a few memories that I don't have. I know. I can tell you, I was, let's see, I would have been 2 months old, 1971 Christmas Day, the loss to the Miami Dolphins in double overtime. I apparently watched it. I don't remember it, but I apparently watched it because my mom told me that she watched it and I was there. So that's probably one of my earliest Chiefs experiences. And you're probably around for that too, Bart. It's good to know. But truly appreciate everybody coming in tonight. Very kind. Thank you for the memberships that came in. Jack, thank you for the gift memberships that you've done. That is awesome and incredible. Truly appreciate you. Appreciate the kind words. I'll be doing these fairly regularly. I will probably go back to the 7 o'clock time frame. Those seem to work for a lot of people. So, but also going to be doing some other shows during the week. Now, remember, you can always get me and Nick Jacobs on Mondays on 41 is the Mic, our post-game podcast. So you can get that every pretty much Mondays, depending on when the Chiefs actually play. But it usually comes out on Monday, so you can always get that from us. Tuesdays, I will be here for the Q&As, and I've got some other things that are in the hopper for the rest of the week. So we'll let you know about that here pretty soon. But hopefully you will get some more either on the live stream here on YouTube, some more videos. There'll especially be some ones for you members that have joined up tonight. So don't think that we're not going to take care of you. We will get you taken care of, and some other stuff hopefully in the works. So I couldn't do it without all of you and the support. Appreciate you joining me tonight. We will catch you later. And as always, you have any questions, always make comments. I owe you all to go through the comments on the YouTube site. But I try to make a point to respond to everybody. So anytime you ever have any questions, thoughts, suggestions, I'm here for it. So let me know. Appreciate you all. Have a great night, and we will catch you later this week as the Chiefs get ready for the Buffalo Bills. Take care, everybody.